it's Erik J. Olson from Array Digital for another installment of Lunchtime Live. Today, I am joined by Brandon. Hey, Brandon, what's happening?
Hey, what's happening, Erik? Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. Well, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Yeah, Brandon Uttley. I am in Charlotte, North Carolina, so not far from you guys in Virginia, where my wife's from. So, we always have that, which is better, North Carolina or Virginia argument. I don't win that a lot, but grew up in the state of North Carolina and went to Chapel Hill, where Michael Jordan played basketball. I got to see him live, so that dates myself a little bit. But been in marketing my entire career, PR and marketing. Started one of the first web design firms in the Charlotte area many years ago, and sold that business in 2008 and got really heavily into social media marketing as well. And, have done a lot of things, a lot of podcasting, wrote a book about podcasting a couple of years ago called Podcast Away. So I think we have a lot in common, and I'm looking forward to talking about what we think is great in marketing today.
Very cool. I definitely want to talk about the book because I'm in the process of editing my first book, and I need to pick your brain a little bit and see what I'm doing wrong. So yeah, we're going to talk about the book. We'll talk about podcasting. Let's talk about social media. We're going to talk about LinkedIn in particular. Sounds like LinkedIn's got a few things going on, so we got a lot to talk about today.
Absolutely.
Cool, man. Hey, for anyone who's watching, if you have a question about any of those topics, books, writing books, podcasting, social media, post your question in the comment. We will see it here, and we will answer your question live. Well, cool. So, when I went to your website, the first thing I noticed right away was brand on.
Yeah, brand on. That's, obviously my name is Brandon. But I was one of the only kids. I was born in the 60s. So again, dating myself, but I remember growing up in high school, there were only 2 Brandons out of 600 kids at the time. But now, you go to a mall, well, before COVID, and, you just hear, Brandon, get over here. So there's a bunch of Brandons. But yeah, I had a boss years ago that used to yell brand on at me, and it never really struck me. But when I started to think about having a podcast a couple of years ago, among many that I've done, I was going to do a more personal podcast. And I thought, well, I'll use my name, Brandon. And I was like, brand on. So there you go. Kind of stuck.
It's perfect. Yeah, that's great. I love it. So that's a nice play on your name. The best that I've been able to come up with, Erik, is when I was running for class president in high school. And my tagline was, "Don't be generic, vote for Erik."
Love it. Yeah.
I didn't win with that.
Hey, that's how it works, rhymes.
And just barely, but all right. So yeah, that's great. The brand on, and then it sounds like you have a newsletter that goes out under that kind of like masthead or branding. Is that right?
Yeah, I've done a newsletter. It used to be called Cool Tech Tools. There's a story behind that, but I morphed that into the brand on brand, if you will, about a year and a half ago. So yeah, I've been doing that newsletter probably 6 years, every 2 weeks. So that is one of my, takeaway things that we'll talk about is email marketing. To me, still number one platform. I think if you look at emarketer.com and other sources, and you can probably, resonate with this and your clients, email marketing is kind of the mainstay, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. But it's also interesting because it seems like everybody wants an email address, and there's a lot of things you can do with that email address, right? So you can email the person, or you can put them into some sort of like a Facebook campaign, which is great. But, with email open rates plummeting over the last couple of years, it seems like some people have kind of adopted text messaging. Have you considered doing anything like that for your newsletter?
I have tried it and personally just haven't had a lot of success with it. And I have a good open rate, probably better than a lot, just because I've have a really active base of people that subscribe to it and really want to get the newsletter and open it up every week. But also I've culled that over the years. So at one point I had, many thousands of people on there, and I had to take the painful exercise of looking and seeing, look, if you haven't opened this email for 3 months, 4 months or whatever, you're off the list. So, people need to go through that exercise occasionally to keep their list clean and healthy. And that can be painful, but at the same time, with the smaller list, you'll probably see your open rate go back up.
And so if you have a higher open rate, then I assume that the email providers are going to let you into more people's inboxes. Is that why you want to cull your email list?
Exactly. Over time, your list can degrade. And I actually worked with a company as a client several years ago that did email verifications. And that was one of their big mantras, is that this is why a lot of these bigger companies that just, typically spam people, or at least get marked for spam, you can get flagged for spam and get taken off line completely, and suddenly get an email from MailChimp or Constant Contact or somebody saying, sorry, you've been flagged as a spammer. You can't send emails at all. And that's a frightening moment for a lot of companies. So using something like the company that I worked with, that company was called Bright Verify. It's, and it costs like a penny per email to verify those email addresses and get rid of the ones that are either old or stale or whatever, and keep your list clean. It's really
that's pretty interesting.
Thing. Yeah.
So does it verify that the people have like double opted in, or is it just verifying that like how fresh each email is?
Yeah, it's verifying that those email addresses are solid and that they're not, bad email addresses. And that's a big issue, especially, the larger the company. Obviously, if you went into a store, retail store or whatever, and gave them a fake email address or an email address that you don't use anymore, some Yahoo or, mail.com or whatever.
AOL.com.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah. Okay, cool. So that's interesting. And what was the name of that company? And do you still use them, or do you use something similar to that?
Yeah, I've used them. It's called Bright Verify. And
Bright
they were
Verify.
acquired a couple of years ago, but they were the leader, the first company that figured this out. And, again, it seems like a simple idea, but the complexities behind that type of thing are pretty enormous. And there are a lot of competitors in it now, but yeah, and the prices again are very low. So for a penny and sometimes less per email, you can run a list of 1,000 or 100,000 emails through there in minutes, and it'll come back and kind of grade and say, here's ones that are horrible and you really need to get rid of them. Here's some that are questionable. You can keep them, but be aware,
But the ones that are horrible, you're going to delete those off your list, right?
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And what about like
bounce backs and stuff like that? Yeah.
What about like adding people to your list? So I know that if you have a newsletter, really the goal is always that you want to grow it. And you're talking about actually, probably growing, but taking away, growing and taking away. So it's probably like this, step function that you've got. Do you have any like best practices for enticing people to join the newsletter? Like, do you have like some sort of a giveaway, or do you have like a pop-up on your website, or how do you get people on?
It's a lot of word of mouth, but I've also started to put my newsletter out there in different places that you can submit your newsletter and people can discover it, right? There's some different apps and things like that now, but I have, grown fond of the opt-in. So it is a little frustrating, as waiting for people to opt in. It's going to be much slower unless you have some massive event, you're on TV or something like that. But it's frustrating. Years ago, I made a decision at one point to actually download all of my emails from LinkedIn, which you can request a database dump from LinkedIn. And in the past, they would give you almost 100% of your followers' email addresses. Now it may not be 100%. Depends on what people's settings are. Nevertheless, you can grab those emails and throw them in a MailChimp or whatever, but you're kind of circumventing both LinkedIn's terms of service and MailChimp's, because when you check the box that says, I have permission to email these people, you don't really technically have their opt-in permission. So I did that one time. And the first email I sent Eric was, hey, you're a LinkedIn connection of mine, and that's why you're getting this. And if you don't mind, I'd like to send you emails. If you want to opt out, click here. And I only had a handful of people opt out. So it worked, but I did have a couple of high level people on my list that really excoriated me for that and said, you shouldn't have done this. And I felt bad.
Yeah.
All right. I won't do it anymore. So, but I know people that do that, and it's not a good practice. Every time somebody signs up for their LinkedIn, they'll scrape your address and throw it in their email database. That's really not cool.
I totally agree. And I've done similar things in the past, and I've lived to regret it. There was one time where I actually set up, I think it was a Zap, where every email that I received and or sent, I can't forget which way it was, I would automatically push them into MailChimp. And so our newsletter subscriber list ballooned, but then imagine to our surprise, every time we sent out a newsletter, we got 30, 50 unsubscribes. And so it's just a bad practice to stuff people in there that haven't requested it, haven't given you permission. And then it's just this churn where you're putting a ton of people in and then a ton of people come out. And yeah. I know, like, every time I sign up for anything these days, automatically I'm put on an email newsletter list. And I think it's a huge mistake because automatically I unsubscribe. If I have not explicitly subscribed, I don't want a part of it.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned Zapier, actually, Zapier.com for those who don't know. And that basically is like a glue. It connects different things together on the internet. So like Erik's suggesting, if you, post something on Instagram, you can make Zapier automatically save that image to your Dropbox or whatever. And in this case, gluing together your email provider, MailChimp, with something else. I did something similar, Erik. In the past, LinkedIn was more open with regard to Zapier. And they used to have this cool feature where every time I got a new LinkedIn connection, it would automatically tee up a draft email to that person, basically saying, hey, thanks for joining me on LinkedIn. Would you mind if I added you to my email list, Brandon, or Cool Tech Tools at the time, right? And so those just automatically appeared in my drafts, and it was easy to send those out. That got cut off. But when I'm diligent about it, I will check my new connections every week and just manually send those people an email. And I do get probably 90% of those people agree. Sure, put me on your list. So that's a tip right there.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
I think that's a great tip. And actually, I want to dive into LinkedIn a little bit more, but it's a really good idea, I think, to reach out to those new connections on LinkedIn in particular, because you go through the effort of putting out a connection request, and then they go through the effort maybe of looking at your profile and accepting. But now you have a connection, and most people connect, and then they don't do anything with it.
Right.
They're just hoping that when that new connection goes to their feed, they see whatever you've posted. But why not reach out to them directly? So I like to treat LinkedIn very much like an in-person networking event. If I go to a networking event with, say, one of my coworkers, then I probably don't really want to be like standing in the corner with him. I want to be networking. I want to go meet new people. And what would I do if I walked up to a stranger in a networking event? I'd probably say something like, hi, my name's Erik. And eventually I'd say something like, I run a digital marketing agency like Array Digital. So I try to do something like that in a direct message to my new connections. And it seems to work. They seem to like to engage in the conversation.
Yeah. Here's another tip. I use Calendly for scheduling online appointments. And I think you do as well.
I do.
Right? And if you pay for the pro version, which starts, I think, at $10 a month, it's pretty cheap. You can actually ask people questions when they schedule an appointment with you. And one of the questions I thought to ask was, can I add you to my email list? Right? Yes or no. And again, I probably get 95% of people say yes, because they're making an appointment with me already. So they know me. And I think it's almost like, what's that, Robert Cialdini, Persuasion, the book about, reciprocity is a huge thing. So if I've agreed to talk to you, meet with you online, or do something like this, you probably feel obligated almost to say yes. What are you going to do? Say no? Because that's kind of offensive, right? So at least then I can always point back and say, you did give me permission.
You asked, and they agreed. And that is a fantastic tip. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I want to go change all my Calendlys now, and I want to add that question. That is such a good idea.
Yeah, and it just dawned on me one day, because I was, again, after the fact going, I maybe should have asked, but now I feel too embarrassed to go back to the person.
Yeah.
Or I don't think about it. There's too many and it would take me too long. But yeah, definitely steal that tip. Cool. That works great.
That's a good idea. So I sent you a Calendly to schedule this live. See, I could have had you on our email newsletter list now, but I missed the opportunity.
That's all right. You have my permission if you want to put me on there. Go ahead.
All right. This is being recorded. Good.
Yeah, everybody sees that live.
I do want to jump into LinkedIn because there's some interesting things happening in LinkedIn these days. But first, we have a couple of questions. So
Yep.
let me go over to the questions here. The first one is from Zach Miller of Zach Miller Says. Zach asks, when you sold the business a few years back, how did you and the buyer come to an agreeable money number, dollar amount?
Great question, Zach. Of course, because of the legal issues, I can't really discuss too much of it. But let's just say that my lawyer and their lawyer, we all got together and we kind of hashed it out. So that was really what it came down to, is just based on my percentage of ownership at that time and what the company was worth, what that was going to look like. And so thank you, but that was a good question. And that ended up being a payback type of period where they gave me so much cash walking out the door and then a monthly check for 5 years thereafter, that type of thing.
Fantastic. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think the key is, what is the company worth? And, you have people that will do valuations, but it's a lot of times subjective, and you're hoping that the market kind of swings in the direction of the company. And so I would imagine there's some haggling when it comes to like what that value is. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. All right, great. We have a question from Sharina. What's your content strategy for the newsletter? Literally, do you have a process for coming up with content? Great question.
Oh, that is a great question, Sharina, because in the past I sort of was winging it. And a lot of times I'd come up on the deadline and go, oh crap, I've got to put together a newsletter at the last minute. I got smart and I started using a system actually called Review, which I believe is revue.co, or it may be Get Review. I can look it up here because I know people are asking about these resources. So it's actually getreview.co. And anyway, what that is a system that allows me to have a Chrome browser extension for one thing. So if I run across something of interest, I can click a button and it will add it to sort of a parking lot for that next newsletter. So when I log in, I got a number of items I can review and see if they fit. My newsletter is about marketing topics, typically branding, things like that. So I'm looking for interesting trends and tips, but also tools, because I always include 3 what I call cool tech tools every single issue. And so I've been doing this for, again, 5+ years. So that's a challenge. Every day or every couple of days, I'm combing through different sites and I'm looking for different pieces of new software that might be of interest to my readers. I'm checking those out, often demoing those or chatting with the people that made that product and finding out more and really vetting that. So that's my process is, as I put that newsletter out and it comes out on Sunday mornings, then I've got 2 weeks before the next one to start brainstorming and thinking about what's out there in the landscape. Great question.
Yeah, great question. And I think a lot of people probably took a similar tact as you did in the beginning, which is just whatever you wanted to talk about at the time, you throw in the newsletter. But then it makes a lot of sense over time to really, get your brand on, right? Like you need to know, like, why is it that people are signing up for these newsletters and what is it they want to hear from you? And then you talk to that thing, even though you can be talking about a lot of other things that you're interested in, you talk about the same thing over and over again, hopefully to a new audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, a couple questions here from Elena on Facebook. The first one is, could you provide the links to the apps you mentioned, Zapier, etc.? All right, so I'll do the first one because I'm a huge Zapier nerd. I used to be a programmer, and now Zapier is the only way that I get like my programming fix, because you can do some pretty sophisticated stuff in there actually. So that's Zapier.com. That is a great tool. This company literally runs on Zapier. So we use it for everything. Anytime we get new connections on social media, we use it for Google Analytics. We use it for anytime someone like Brandon uses my Calendly, we can get triggered. A Zap can be triggered, which means a whole bunch of things can happen. So like, as an example, when Brandon said that today was a good date and time for him, I created automatically through Zapier some tasks for the team, like one task to send him a message and get some information from him, another to do some pre-promotion, a third to do some post-promotion of this, just a whole bunch of things that you want done on a regular basis, but it's just a pain to do it, and you forget about it, so you can automate it with Zapier.
Yeah. Another one I'll mention, Eric, is called If This Then That. And the cool thing about that one, and by the way, I'll give you that one in the chat, is ifttt.com. Really similar to Zapier. It's been 100% free for years, but they just announced they are introducing a pro version. And get this, for the next, I think 12 days, because I'm getting these emails, they're allowing people to set their own price that they'll pay indefinitely. You can pay as little as $1.99 a month for the pro version, which gives you the unlimited ability to create what they call applets, which are, again, connecting this thing with this thing. So again, if my Calendly appears, then shoot me a notice in Slack, or if somebody tweets me, Slack me a message and add it to a Google spreadsheet, whatever. Right. So if this, then that is another good one. And it's cheaper. Zapier it's got a free version too, but once you pay for it, I can't remember, Eric, do you know what you pay for that? It's
we pay over $200 a month now. So
yeah,
it scales up based on the number of operations you have and things like that.
Right. So you may want to check out If This Then That. It might do the trick for you or some people as well.
That's pretty cool. So with the pro plan, do they have like multiple steps now?
Yeah, they've got new sort of multiple integrations. It used to just be one thing to the next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of back and forth between two apps, but now you can daisy chain these things together and have lots of different complicated things going back and forth. So if you're that kind of programming mind that can figure out like, hey, I don't like to, every time I get an email from this person, have to copy and paste stuff into a Google spreadsheet or whatever. A lot of this stuff now can, go back and forth between systems seamlessly. Really
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. And it's pretty much guaranteed to happen. Now, sometimes there are hiccups, but in particular with Zapier, it'll tell you that it had a trouble, and you can fix whatever the problem is and then like replay the Zap, which is nice. But whenever that happens, I'm always like, oh no, like what steps were skipped? Because a lot of times I'll have like 8 or 10 things that need to be done in one of these apps. And, if it gets interrupted somewhere, like if it got interrupted and I didn't finish it manually, then, we were dropping balls. So
yeah,
Zapier is fantastic. Another one that we've used here is Integromat. You ever use that one?
I have not.
So that is that is one that was introduced to us when we wanted to put out a daily email to our clients that showed what tasks we had done in Asana and which ones were coming up that were not yet complete. And Zapier didn't quite have the integration that we needed, but Integromat did. It's more advanced. It's much more of like a programming, not really a language, but like a programming mentality.
Okay.
And so it was a lot more difficult for us to internally even grasp the power, but it's very, very powerful though.
Neat.
Any other URLs that you wanted to mention before we move on to the next question?
No, I think we've covered all of them unless we miss one, somebody wants to chat that in the comments.
Okay, great. Elena's got one more question, and then we got to move on to LinkedIn because there's something interesting happening there.
Yeah. And Elena, we did drop that link in there for my email newsletter. If you want to join that, it's getreview.com/profile/Brandon Uttley with 2 T's. Thank you.
Very cool. All right. Elena, also not sure if you've mentioned it, but how do,
yeah, we got that.
You just answered that. All right. You read ahead of me. Very good. All right, cool. Let's shift gears a little bit. LinkedIn. It seems like LinkedIn is on the offensive these days. They are putting out some interesting features. So as an example, I just got approved for LinkedIn Live maybe a month ago. So we're actually broadcasting to LinkedIn Live along with a whole bunch of other platforms. But that's something that's, well, I was very surprised that we got it. I had to apply 4 times. My business partner, Kevin.
So let me ask you about that because I've applied 4 times too. Do you pay for LinkedIn?
No.
Okay. All right. So that was part of my conjecture is like, are they only giving it to paying LinkedIn customers? So the answer is no, but it just took a while. So it seems to be kind of random, right? Who gets it? But that's congrats.
It does.
Yeah.
I would say that the thing that probably resulted in me getting it is that we're doing these live streams on a consistent basis. And each one of these live streams are put up into places like Facebook, and they're put up into YouTube. And so in my submission, I said, hey, we're doing this already. And we also have a podcast. We interview people live for the podcast. So we're streaming. We want to stream to LinkedIn as well.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, we have a common friend, Jen Lehner, and she was on the Lunchtime Live maybe about 2 months ago. And in that broadcast, which didn't go to LinkedIn because I hadn't been approved yet, we were both lamenting that we had not been approved for LinkedIn Live yet. And so I took a little clip out of that where we were both like, we want LinkedIn Live. And I sent that off in my last submission as well. So maybe that's what pushed us over the edge.
Hey, I like that. That might be a ploy.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Jen Lehner still has that.
So the moment that I got it, I told her about it, and she's like, "Oh, take me with you."
Yeah. And by the way, we do have her to thank for bringing us together. Jen Lehner is great. Her front row entrepreneur Facebook group is one of the best I'm in, and she's just amazing with the stuff she shares.
She is awesome. I listen to her every single morning on her flash briefing.
Yeah, that's awesome. We were talking before this went live about the flash briefing, and it's cool that you have a flash briefing. I did have one for a while, stopped doing it. I'd like to do it again, but those are great. It's not that hard now to put an Alexa request out there to get your own daily flash briefing if you want. It doesn't even have to be daily. I think if you have to tell them how often you're going to publish, and you need to hit that mark. So if you say you're only going to do once a week, you could do 5 times a week, but as long as you get one a week, they're good with that.
Yeah. Flash briefings are great. And then if you're putting out audio, then it could be a flash briefing. It could be a podcast. So if you're going to do a flash briefing, it's super simple to push it to other places like iTunes and Google Podcasts. That's great.
Got it.
All right. Hey, we got to get back to LinkedIn. So I understand there's something interesting happening in LinkedIn land today. What is it?
Yeah, LinkedIn announced their own version of LinkedIn Stories. So much like Instagram and Facebook, you can now, you can do live stories that'll disappear after a certain amount of time. So that is rolling out. It is only going to be available through their mobile app, apparently. If you don't see it, just give it some time, or maybe go to your app store and make sure you have the latest version of the app. But that is going to be another game changer. As you said, LinkedIn has been spending a lot of time. I just saw on Search Engine Land, which is a pretty heavily read blog, that LinkedIn's, and I'm going to look down to read the stat, but they've seen a 50% increase in content shared year over year. So, many more people have been flocking to LinkedIn. Probably, especially during COVID, right? People that may have been at work before on the job and not had a lot of opportunity to be surfing LinkedIn are now at home. So their boss isn't necessarily over their shoulder. They're on LinkedIn more. People are out of work. They're sharing stuff. So LinkedIn's trying to step up their game, and this LinkedIn Stories will be interesting to see where that goes.
So I just opened the app, and it may be a little bit difficult to see through this.
See it. Yeah, you got it, man.
I got it.
That's awesome.
And it looks like I could even post my own. So that's cool.
Yeah. And so I don't have that on mine, and I'm looking at it. I looked at it before the podcast started. So again, it's probably just a matter of hours before.
Is it going to roll out to everybody? Okay.
Yeah. It was in beta or testing for a while, apparently. But now, like you just showed, there's going to be a little button up the top, similar to Instagram, add to your story. And what I read is that they were going to have these unique stickers that you can plop on top of the video and stuff like that. But so it'll be fun to see where that goes. They're just, just like Instagram, I think they're trying to push more people to use their mobile app, which frankly is better in some cases. Here's another tip, Eric. You know how you have your title on LinkedIn, which appears below your name?
Headline.
Yeah. And most people just default to their current title, but you can actually include usually about 128 characters there. It's almost like a tweet. But if you go in the mobile app and edit that, you can put up to 250 characters there. So a lot more characters in your headline, but you can only do it in the mobile app. It's a little quirk that many people don't know about, but that's something to check out.
All right. That is tip number 2 that I'm going to steal from you. That was awesome information. I did not know that. And I wondered how it was that some people had such long headlines. That's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know where I learned that. It might have been Jen Lehner, but somebody else. But man, that is, really a cool little thing. Now it's a long thing. It's going to have like 3 lines under your name. Might be too much, but just play around with it.
Yeah, great call.
Yeah.
From Kevin Daisy, the co-founder of Array Digital, he has another tip about how to get LinkedIn Live. So he says, also make sure you engage 2-factor authentication. It is required to get LinkedIn Live.
That's right. And I think Kevin also asked, if you want to apply, you actually have to just Google LinkedIn live video, and you'll see a link to a form. You need to fill out a form, tell them who you are, your LinkedIn page. And as Erik was suggesting, they'll ask you, where else have you, if any places, done live video? We want to see some examples. So you may want to do a few before you submit so that they see, hey, this person has a camera and has used it and put it on YouTube or wherever.
Yeah, and also when you apply, they're going to ask you if you are applying for your personal profile on LinkedIn or company profile. Each time I selected personal profile, because I think that I know that I get a lot more engagement through the personal profile on LinkedIn than through the company profile. So I wanted to pick the profile that had the most engagement on LinkedIn. I guarantee when they get one of those submissions, they have algorithms and reports that are already run that say, okay, here's this guy, Erik Olson, as an example, that just applied. How many followers does he have? How many times does he post on average? What's his engagement like? And they want to see those stats. So you want to pick whatever profile has the highest engagement, in my opinion.
Exactly. I agree.
Well, very cool. I can't wait to play around with stories. I want to have to maybe let's do a.
Yeah. Why don't you do one?
We're going to do it. Let's see if this works. We're going to do a quick story. Oh, hold on. Okay. So right off the bat, I got to turn my camera around. Oh, this is different. Oh, hold to record. Oh, look at this. I don't even know how to do this. Oh, here we go. All right.
Oh, there you
Ready?
go.
This is going to be very meta. So, hello, LinkedIn Live. I am actually live on. Oh, wait. I totally screwed up. It's not LinkedIn Live. Hello, LinkedIn Stories. I am live on LinkedIn right now with Brandon Uttley.
Yeah, that is totally meta.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, now it's playing. All right, cool. We'll have to play around with that today. I didn't know that was that came out today. I knew it was coming out, but I didn't know that was coming out until you told me. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Definitely.
Well, I've picked up a lot of really good information. My guess is that if people subscribe to your newsletter, they can get a lot of really good information every 2 weeks delivered to their inbox. What is the best way for them to get on that email newsletter list?
I think you put it in the chat, but if you go to getreview.co/profile/Brandon Uttley, there you go. You subscribe right there.
Fantastic. All right. And Array Digital also has an email newsletter where we talk about marketing. That comes out twice a month, basically the same frequency as Brandon's. If you go to thisisarray.live, you can subscribe for that and to get text notifications for these live broadcasts. All right, Brandon, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. That was fun.
Hey, thank you, Erik. It's been a pleasure.